In 1801, 2 years before the signing of the Louisiana Purchase, and just 25 after the founding of the nation, a small paper known as the Rockbridge Repository published its first edition. Consisting mainly of local classifieds and some reprints of national stories, the paper established a newsroom that would serve the Rockbridge area to the current day. The path to now was a long and winding one, and while the paper stayed consistent in its service of county residents, it has done so under various monikers and editorial leanings. The repository became the Lexington newsletter in 1819, which became the Rockbridge Intelligencer after a merger with its competitor, the Telegraph, in 1823. It was known as the Union from 1831 to 35. Finally, in 1835, then-owner C.C. Baldwin arrived at the name that stuck, the Lexington Gazette. In the late 1850s and early 1860s, political tensions in the country were at a crescendo. True to its Whig Party identification, the paper supported John Bell of Tennessee for president. This short-lived political movement, known as the Constitutional Union Party, represented the moderate position of the day. The Gazette vilified the Democrats, holding them most to blame for sectionalism in politics, while hardly mentioning Lincoln and the Republicans, who were apparently seen as so radical that no comment was necessary. The writers at the Gazette understood that secession meant civil war. The work of war and death once commenced, the spirit will diffuse itself everywhere and in all classes. On March 14, 1861, the paper reprinted Lincoln's inaugural address without comment. On April 12th, the first shots of the Civil War were fired at Fort Sumter. Sadly, the microfilm record is missing of the immediate following edition, but the next issue on April 25th covered war movements and mustering of the Rockbridge Rifles and 2 companies of cavalry. It also reported the capture of the armory at Harper's Ferry by Virginia troops. The May 30th paper contains a small note in the first column, front page, saying, "The editor is absent. His place is supplied by a friend." Whether McNutt or the friend wrote of Virginia's decisions to secede, the pro-union stance of the Gazette was gone. The paper editorialized, "Last Thursday, the freemen of Virginia voted themselves out of the corrupt, rotten, and abolitionized despotism of the northern usurpers. Sink or swim, live or die, survive or perish. Their destinies are now cast with the Southern Confederacy."
Secession and war were a disaster for the Gazette, with advertising volume plummeting and the overall length reduced to 2 pages or a half sheet. The paper regained its footing by early 1862, but throughout the war, paper shortages would restrain editions for periods of time. On August 19th, the paper reminded readers that accepted wood, corn, chickens, butter, and other commodities in barter for subscriptions.
Ads offering rewards for deserters appeared in the Gazette. Notices of tribute to officers and men killed in battle became a source of revenue as the war dragged on. War news in the spring of 1862 was bad from the Confederate perspective, but Southern forces were generally portrayed as fighting gallantly until overwhelmed by the superior Union numbers. In the May 14, 1863 issue of the Gazette, Stonewall Jackson's death was mentioned in an account of the Battle of Chancellorsville. The next day, the Gazette got out an extra edition focusing mainly on Jackson, but also covering the deaths of 2 other locals, General E.F. Paxton and Captain Greenlee Davidson. Hunter's raid on Lexington on June 11, 1864, in which the VMI barracks and Governor John Letcher's house were burned, disrupted publication of the Gazette for over a month. The paper reported on July 6th, the first issue printed after the raid, that federal troops had destroyed the newspaper's printing press and scattered its type in the streets. Publisher McNutt obtained a smaller press and collected what type he could recover from the streets of Lexington to resume publication. In the April 13, 1865 issue, Lee's surrender at Appomattox was acknowledged. The Gazette published more or less throughout the Civil War, providing a unique primary source of information from the period. Observers of the news content in the Gazette will notice a marked change during and following the time of the Civil War. Coverage of state and particularly local news predominated. Editorials were impassioned, and references to the federal government might lead the reader to believe that it was a foreign power. By 1867, and following a series of mergers, the Gazette ran as the Gazette and Citizen under the ownership of Elihu H. Barclay, a Civil War veteran who had lost an arm in the war. Barclay was a staunch supporter of Confederate veterans organizations, as well as a strong member of the Democratic Party. He served in the Virginia House of Delegates and was an organizer and first president of the Virginia Press Association in 1879. Following these changes at the Gazette, Reverend A. Poe Bode and Scott Moore announced the formation of a new newspaper in Lexington.
The Rockbridge County News first appeared on November the 7th, 1884. In the first issue, the owners said that the paper would print political news, but would refrain from comment on the political scene. In a message to the community, the new publisher said, "We shall print for the many, not for the few,"
reporting on news and events from the many communities and areas of the county. County letters remain a part of the News-Gazette to this day. In 1877, Bode sold the County News to Samuel J. Graham and Matthew W. Paxton. Graham was a young lawyer in Lexington, and Paxton was a farmer and deputy collector of Internal Revenue, appointed by President Cleveland. Paxton bought Graham out, and when Cleveland lost re-election, he focused his efforts on the paper. Under his ownership, the County News took a more serious turn, with Paxton stating that the duty of the paper was to be a faithful chronicler of current events. The turn of the century saw many papers come and go. Neither the Gazette or the County News, the forerunners of the News-Gazette, missed publication of an issue during those years of change and turmoil. Despite a fire all but destroying the County News offices in 1907, after surviving one of the worst fires in Lexington history, the newspaper's publisher, the first of 4 generations of M.W. Paxtons, refused to move, and the newspaper made it to the streets on time. As the publisher wrote in that issue, the County News makes its bow this afternoon with its plumage cut, but still prepared to serve the good people of Rockbridge. The County News kept running in that location till 1937, when another fire finally pushed the paper to move its offices. The new office, located between the State Theater and Schul's Furniture Store at the time, remained the home of the County News until it merged with the Lexington Gazette in 1962, and remains the headquarters for the News-Gazette. Around 1930, the first Matthew Paxton relinquished control of the Rockbridge County News to his son, also Matthew White Paxton, who then had a law practice in Lexington. Paxton's wife, Nell, was very involved with the County News as a proofreader and alter ego to the publisher, who was known for the incisive editorials that he continued to pen for over 4 decades. Mr. Paxton's cousin, Jenny Hopkins, worked as office manager. When Houston Harlow, a VMI graduate, returned home to assume the reins of the Lexington Gazette in 1946, the audited weekly circulation of the Gazette was right at 500. When the two papers merged in 1962, the Gazette's circulation had grown to approximately 3,300. The County News circulation at the time of the merger was approximately 4,200. In 1952, another native son who had once been a school teacher returned home to the editorship of a family-owned newspaper. Matthew W. Paxton Jr. became the third with that name to do so. Paxton Jr. graduated from Washington and Lee in 1949 with a degree in English and had not given much thought to the newspaper business. My dad had never really pressured my younger brother Bob or me to pursue the Fourth Estate, recalled Paxton Jr. in an interview with Doug Chase in 2001.
When he assumed the editorship in 1952, Paxton immediately realized that Harlow and the Gazette had jumped way ahead of the County News in the area of photography. They had a lot more photographs in their paper than we did, and people liked those photographs. I went out and bought an old speed graphic camera, which was pretty fancy in those days, and I learned to be a photographer in a hurry, recalled Paxton with a chuckle. The two papers maintained a spirited competition, but it was always friendly and civilized. Paxton and Harlow were friends besides being business competitors. They shared ad layouts with each other and even partnered on equipment purchases, buying a Fairchild photo engraving machine that made the plastic plates for the photos in both papers.
Prior to 1955, Both newspapers used linotype machines, hand-set and machine-created larger point type for display advertising and headlines, and folding and collation by hand to produce their product. Newspaper technology had remained relatively constant since the turn of the century, with the linotype machine representing a huge boost to publishers compared to purely handset type. The County News used a Babcock Optimus press until 1955. The press, which was hand-fed with large flat sheets of newsprint, could print 4 pages at a time, at a rate of 1,000 an hour. After the 4 pages were printed on one side of the sheets were inverted so that the 4 pages on the other side could be printed. Once printed, the sheets were cut, trimmed, and folded into sections by another machine, then collated by hand. Paxton Jr. recalled, "It was as loud as 6 freight trains in the building when that press was running." In 1955, Paxton acquired ownership of the County News from his father. A rebuilt Goss web-fed press was purchased and moved to the County News building on Nelson Street. The new press was fed from a roll of paper and printed a complete 8-page section, producing about 2,500 per hour. The sections still had to be collated by hand, but the amount of time saved in production was significant. In the fall of 1961, as friends Harlow and Paxton Jr. were chatting, they began to discuss the obvious. The two papers weren't so much competing as were actually duplicating each other. Perhaps they should start quiet talks about a merger. In the spring of 1962, a noted New York newspaper broker specializing in mergers helped Paxton and Harlow merge their papers into a long, flourishing publication that included the community's favorite elements of each paper. In the fall of 1971, the News-Gazette made the move to offset printing technology, silencing the linotype machines and negating the need to melt down vast amounts of lead every Thursday afternoon. No longer would there be heavy, cumbersome pages of upside-down, backwards type. There would be no lead type at all. Paxton recalled, "That was an incredibly traumatic time for me. It seemed that every single technological thing I knew about the newspaper business was being thrown out the window. With the first generation of computer technology, key punch operators retyped the edited stories, generating a ticker tape with holes that were code for letters. That tape was fed into a reader, which processed the information and sent it electronically to a computerized photographic typesetting machine. Stories set to the proper column width, font, and type size came out on the photographic paper, which could then be pasted onto layout sheets to compose the pages. It could be read as it would be laid out on the page, not upside down and backward." After the death of Harlow in 1971, Paxton needed a partner who could carry the business management. This is where Tad Humphreys entered the scene and became the perfect partner. He even played a role in coaxing Matthew Paxton IV to return to Lexington and begin working at the News-Gazette as the assistant business manager. In 1986, Humphreys retired, and Matt Paxton IV succeeded him as business manager. That same year, the paper installed a personal computer-based editorial system to replace the aging optical scanners. By the early 2000s, off-the-shelf software like Microsoft Word and Adobe PageMaker offered a cost-effective solution for writing and editing of stories and ad and page design. Digital cameras allowed us to retire our photo darkroom and freed us from relying on local one-hour processing labs for color photos. Beginning in the late 1990s, the News-Gazette entered the internet era. The company's website, thenewsgazette.com, debuted. By the mid-2000s, the News-Gazette.com offered a digest of stories scraped from the print edition, which required a paid subscription to the print newspaper to access. Today, virtually all the news content in each print edition goes up on the website on Wednesday mornings. The advent of social media and the smartphone in the 2000s accelerated the loss of traditional print advertising in newspapers across the country. The News-Gazette was not spared. While traditional advertising sources dried up, the Gazette nimbly responded to the shifting tides by producing more tailored advertising publications. While the digital age transformed the newspaper business, the need for local coverage and good faith editorial has never been greater. Despite the challenges of the digital age, the News-Gazette has been a leader in finding strategies that keep local news accessible to the community. It is not without trepidation that the News-Gazette navigates these shifting tides in the media business, but it is with a sense of excitement and adventure that we trust you will continue to share the journey with us.